The sun beat down on the endless sand, turning every breath into heat and grit. Sergeant Jack Miller squinted beneath his helmet, his M4 resting tight against his chest. At his side padded Shadow, a sleek Belgian Malinois, black and tan, muscles rippling beneath a dusty vest labeled K9 unit. "Eyes up, team," Jack murmured into his radio. "Shadow's signaling something." The dog's ears twitched. He froze, nose hovering just above the dirt road leading into a deserted Iraqi village. The rest of the squad stopped instantly, years of training kicking in. A bead of sweat rolled down Jack's cheek as he crouched next to Shadow. "Talk to me, buddy. What do you smell?" Shadow's nose darted, then he sat, their silent signal. Jack's stomach dropped. "IED," he whispered. Corporal Davis cursed softly behind him. "That's the third this week." Jack didn't answer. Instead, he clipped Shadow's leash to his vest and crawled forward, brushing away the top layer of dust. Beneath the dirt was a thin wire, nearly invisible in the blinding sun. Jack followed it carefully until he found the trigger, hidden under a pile of rocks near the roadside. "EOD, I've got a live one," he said, voice steady but tight. "Send the bot." As they waited, the street was silent. Too silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Shadow's tail flicked once. Jack looked up just in time to see a figure dart behind a crumbling wall. "Contact, east side!" Gunfire erupted. Bullets snapped through the air. Jack dropped behind an old truck, returning fire while Shadow growled low beside him, eyes locked on the direction of the attack. "Stay down!" Jack shouted to his men. "Shadow, go!" The dog launched forward like lightning. He weaved between walls, disappeared into the smoke and chaos. Seconds later, a scream echoed. Then silence. When Shadow returned, his vest was torn and his shoulder bleeding slightly, but his tail still wagged. Jack knelt, gripping his fur. "Good boy. You're one hell of a soldier." The firefight died down as air support circled above. The team regrouped, shaken but alive. The EOD unit cleared the bomb, and soon the road was secure. As dusk settled, Jack sat beside Shadow near the Humvee. The air smelled of sand, diesel, and cordite, the scent of survival. He poured some water into a metal bowl. Shadow lapped it up, tongue hanging, eyes still alert to every sound. "You saved us again," Jack said quietly. "I don't know how many times I owe you now." Shadow looked up, ears perked, as if understanding every word. For a moment, the chaos faded. There was only the soldier and his dog, bound by trust stronger than fear. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the radio crackled with new orders. Jack sighed, scratching behind Shadow's ear. "Guess we're not done yet, partner." Shadow barked once, short, sharp, and full of resolve. And as night swallowed the desert, they rose together, two shadows moving toward another mission. The night was alive with whispers of danger. The convoy rolled through the outskirts of Al-Haditha, headlights dimmed to narrow beams slicing through the darkness. Jack sat in the back of the second Humvee, Shadow curled beside him, resting but alert, always alert. Lieutenant Sarah Bennett's voice crackled over the radio. "Stay tight, Bravo team. Route's been cleared, but don't trust it." Jack smirked faintly. "Never do, ma'am." Shadow suddenly lifted his head, ears perked, muscles tense. That was all the warning Jack needed. "Stop the vehicle!" he barked. But it was too late. The world exploded. A thunderous boom ripped through the night, flipping the lead Humvee into a ball of flame. Shrapnel hissed through the air. Jack hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of him. Shadow landed beside him, growling, tail stiff. "Davis, report!" Jack yelled, coughing through the dust. Static answered, then gunfire. Insurgents poured out from the alleys, firing AKs and RPGs. Tracers lit up the desert like red lightning. Jack grabbed his rifle and fired back, each shot deliberate. Shadow stayed low, ears flattened, awaiting the next command. "Shadow, flank right!" Jack ordered. The Malinois darted into the dark, moving like smoke. He disappeared behind a wall, then a cry echoed, the sharp, terrified sound of an enemy soldier taken by surprise. Seconds later, Shadow returned, dragging a dropped rifle in his jaws. "Good work," Jack muttered, reloading. But the odds were bad. Half their team was down, and the radio antenna was blown clean off. Jack crawled to the burning wreck, shielding his face from the heat. Inside, he found the driver, gone. He shut the man's eyes, jaw tight. "Shadow, we're moving!" Bullets whined around them as they dove into a narrow alley. Jack's heart pounded like a drum. The night smelled of smoke, blood, and cordite, the language of war. He could hear enemy voices closing in. He pressed his back against a wall, checked his ammo, only one mag left. Shadow whined softly, sensing his tension. Jack touched the dog's head. "It's okay, buddy, we've been in worse." He wasn't sure if that was true. A distant flash, another explosion, shook the ground. The alley filled with dust. Jack coughed, clutching Shadow's harness. "Radio's dead. We're on our own," he muttered. "Let's find high ground." They slipped through the ruins, moving like ghosts under the broken moonlight. Somewhere ahead, Jack spotted the faint glow of a fire, and something else. Voices. American. He exhaled, hope. Then a sniper round cracked past his ear, splintering the wall behind him. He froze. "The Ghost," he whispered. Every soldier in this region knew that name, a phantom insurgent marksman responsible for over a dozen U.S. casualties. Shadow growled, low and primal. Jack pressed closer to the wall. "We'll find him, partner," he murmured, "and we'll end this." The night closed around them, and the hunt began. The dawn over Iraq came blood red, streaking the sky like an open wound. Jack crouched among the ruins of a bombed-out compound, his rifle resting against broken stone. Shadow sat beside him, tail still, eyes sharp, a mirror of his handler's focus. They'd been moving all night, following the faint echo of the sniper's shot. The Ghost was somewhere out there, a phantom with a rifle and a reputation. Every soldier in this region feared him. Every mission report carried the same signature: clean shots, no survivors. Jack checked his compass and map. "We're close," he whispered. "You feel it too, don't you, boy?" Shadow's ears twitched. He let out a low rumble, not fear, but warning. Jack froze. A wire, almost invisible, ran between two crumbled walls. Tripwire. "Good eye, soldier," he murmured, cutting the wire carefully. His pulse thudded. "This whole area is a death trap." They moved slowly through the maze of stone alleys. The ground was littered with shell casings, broken toys, and torn prayer rugs. Signs of a village long abandoned. Each step was a negotiation with death. Suddenly, Shadow stiffened, nose pressed against the air. Then he pulled toward a dark cellar half buried in sand. "What is it?" Jack whispered, kneeling. Shadow whined once and scratched at the door. Jack drew his pistol, pushed it open, and swept the beam of his flashlight inside. A sound, faint, human, a woman's voice. "Help!" Jack's breath caught. He descended the narrow steps, Shadow leading. In the corner of the cellar lay a figure, a U.S. Army medic, hands bound, uniform torn and bloodied. "Jesus Christ," Jack muttered, kneeling beside her. "Lieutenant Bennett?" Her eyelids fluttered. Who are you?" "Sergeant Jack Miller, K-9 unit. You're safe now." "Safe?" she whispered bitterly. "No one's safe here. He's watching." Jack frowned. "The Ghost?" She nodded weakly. "He captured me 2 days ago, uses this place as bait. Every rescue team that comes never makes it out." Jack's stomach twisted. He turned to Shadow. "We're getting her out." But the second he said it, Shadow's ears went up, alarmed. Jack ducked instinctively. A sniper round tore through the door frame, showering them with splinters. "Move!" Jack yelled, dragging Bennett behind a stone pillar. Shadow growled and barked toward the window, pinpointing the sniper's direction. The Ghost had them pinned. Jack fired back blindly, bullets kicking up dust. "We need smoke cover," he muttered, pulling a grenade from his vest and tossing it outside. Smoke billowed through the room. "Can you walk?" he asked Bennett. "Barely," she gasped, "but I'll try." "Shadow, on me!" They sprinted through the haze, ducking low. Shadow bolted ahead, barking, weaving in unpredictable patterns to draw the sniper's aim. Jack dragged Bennett toward the opposite wall, adrenaline burning through exhaustion. Another shot. Close, too close. Jack spun, fired 3 times. Nothing. The Ghost had already moved. They reached an alley and collapsed behind cover, breathing hard. "Why risk coming for me?" Bennett asked between gasps. Jack looked at her, then at Shadow. "Because that's what we do. We don't leave our own behind." Shadow barked once, short, proud, defiant. The Ghost had missed his mark tonight, but Jack knew this was far from over. Somewhere on the ridge, a lone scope glinted in the sun. The hunter was still watching. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, a sea of gold and silence. Heat shimmered on the horizon, turning the air into waves. Jack's boots sank into the soft sand with every step. Sweat trickled down his neck beneath the armor. The radio hissed with static. No signal. No contact. Shadow trotted beside him, tongue out, tail low but steady. Every so often he'd glance back at Sarah, limping but refusing to slow down. "Still good?" Jack asked. Sarah gave a faint smile. "Define good," Jack chuckled. "You're still walking. That's good enough for me." They pressed on, following the broken GPS coordinates toward the extraction point, a plateau surrounded by dunes. But the closer they got, the heavier Jack's gut felt. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Shadow stopped suddenly, muscles stiff. His growl rumbled deep and low, a sound Jack had learned never to ignore. "What is it?" Jack whispered. The dog's nose dipped toward the sand. Jack crouched, brushed the surface, and froze. Beneath the thin layer of dust was a small metal plate. Pressure trigger. "Damn it," he hissed. "The whole field's mined." Sarah's face went pale. "He knew we'd come this way." "The ghost set the trap," Jack muttered. "He's been leading us here all along." A distant voice echoed through the heat, distorted through a speaker. "You shouldn't have come, Sergeant Miller." Jack's eyes shot upward. A figure stood on the ridge above them, silhouetted against the sun, tall, lean, rifle in hand. The ghost. "Drop your weapon," the voice called again, calm and deliberate, "or she dies first." Jack raised his rifle halfway, but didn't lower it. "You're not walking away from this." The ghost laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You soldiers still think honor means something out here?" Then, a single shot. The bullet grazed Jack's arm, spinning him sideways. Shadow barked furiously, darting in front of him. "Stay down!" Jack shouted, dragging Sarah behind a dune. Blood dripped down his sleeve, but he ignored it. The sniper's voice came again. "You can't win, Sergeant. Every path out of here leads to hell." "Maybe," Jack muttered, reloading, "but I've walked through worse." He looked at Shadow. "Find him." Shadow bolted across the sand, weaving between dunes, using the terrain to his advantage. The ghost fired again, missed. Another shot, missed again. Then silence. Jack crawled forward, keeping low. He reached a cluster of rocks near the ridge and spotted movement. Shadow lunging at the ghost from behind. Both disappeared in a cloud of dust. Jack scrambled up, rifle ready. The ghost had dropped his weapon and was wrestling with the dog, knife flashing in the sun. Jack fired once. The bullet struck the knife, sending it spinning away. He charged forward, tackling the ghost to the ground. Sand flew, fists landed. The man's mask fell, revealing a scarred, weathered face. "American." Jack froze. You're U.S. Army." The man sneered. "Was until your government left us here." Before Jack could react, the ghost slammed a knee into his chest, knocking the wind out of him. But Shadow lunged again, clamping his teeth onto the man's arm. Jack rolled, grabbed his sidearm, and fired. Once. The ghost went still. The desert was silent again. Jack sat back, chest heaving, the weight of the war pressing down on him. Shadow limped toward him, tail wagging weakly. "You did good, buddy," Jack said, voice shaking. "You did damn good." Sarah approached slowly, dust and tears streaking her face. "Is it over?" Jack looked toward the horizon, endless and unforgiving. "For now." A faint hum broke the silence. Chopper blades. Rescue. He smiled for the first time in days. "We're going home." Shadow pressed his head against Jack's hand, eyes soft and loyal. Under the burning Iraqi sun, man and dog stood side by side, two survivors, forged in fire, walking toward the sound of salvation. The air smelled different, clean, cool, almost too quiet. Jack stood on the tarmac at Dover Air Force Base, boots planted on American soil for the first time in 18 months. The helicopter's blades slowed behind him, stirring up his memories like dust. Shadow sat beside him, tail thumping softly, eyes scanning the unfamiliar calm. No sand, no gunfire, just the sound of flags fluttering in the morning breeze. Sarah Bennett stepped down from the aircraft, her arm in a sling. When she saw Jack, she smiled. "Didn't think we'd make it out, Sergeant." He gave a faint grin. "Neither did I." Shadow barked once, as if to correct them both. He had known. A few officers approached, offering salutes and handshakes, medals, commendations, formalities, all of it blurred together. Jack barely heard the speeches. His eyes kept drifting to the horizon, where the rising sun painted the sky in gold. It reminded him of Iraq, except here, the light didn't burn. Later, inside the base clinic, a nurse knelt to pet Shadow. "He's beautiful," she said. "They say he saved 3 lives out there." Jack's voice was quiet. 4, if you count mine. The nurse smiled, then looked up at him. "He's being recommended for retirement. They think he's earned a rest. Jack frowned. Retirement? He's still strong. Maybe, she said gently, but after what you two have been through, maybe it's time for peace. Peace. The word felt strange in his mouth. Jack had forgotten what that was supposed to feel like. A month later, Jack found himself standing in front of a small white house on the outskirts of Virginia. The army had helped him settle in, part of a transition program. It felt surreal. Grass instead of sand, silence instead of gunfire. Shadow trotted across the yard, nose buried in the earth, tail wagging lazily. He seemed at ease here, maybe more than Jack was. Every night, Jack would wake to phantom sounds, gunfire, explosions, screams that weren't real anymore. But when he turned, Shadow was always there, pressed against the side of the bed, eyes open, watching, guarding him. It was Shadow who pulled him back every time. One evening, Sarah visited. She had left the army too, now working with veteran rehabilitation programs. She brought coffee in a small box wrapped in a flag. "What's this?" Jack asked. She smiled. "A medal, for both of you, for extraordinary bravery in the field of combat." Jack opened it slowly. Inside was a silver medal, and beside it, a dog tag engraved with Shadow K9 Unit, Valor in Action. He swallowed hard. "He doesn't care about medals," he said softly. "Maybe not," Sarah replied, "but you do." For a long moment, they stood on the porch in silence, watching the sunset bleed across the fields. Shadow lay at their feet, head resting on his paws, finally relaxed. Sarah looked at Jack. "You ever think of going back?" Jack's gaze drifted toward the horizon. "Not to war," he said, "but maybe to help others find their way home." Shadow barked once, the same bark he used before every mission, sharp and certain. Jack smiled. "Guess that's a yes." As the sky darkened, man and dog sat side by side, not as soldiers anymore, but as survivors. The ghosts of Iraq would always linger, but tonight, they weren't enemies. They were reminders of loyalty, of courage, of love that survived the fire. And for the first time in years, Jack Miller believed in tomorrow. It wasn't the battlefield of Iraq, but the mission was just as real. A call came in early one morning. A hiker lost in the mountains, trapped by a sudden landslide. The search and rescue team requested a K9 unit. Jack and Shadow were ready. After months of quiet life, this was their first field operation on home soil. A final test of skill, trust, and instinct. "Think you're ready for one last run, buddy?" Jack asked, fastening Shadow's harness. The dog tilted his head, ears perking, tail wagging with restrained excitement. Jack laughed softly. "Thought so." They drove into the forest at first light, sunlight glinting off the frost-tipped trees. Shadow's nose twitched as soon as they arrived, scanning the air, the ground, every crack and crevice. Jack followed, boots crunching on snow and rock. Hours passed, the hiker's trail faint, the wind bitter. Jack's arm ached from old wounds, but he ignored it. Shadow, as always, pressed forward, sniffing, listening, searching. Then, a faint whine carried over the ridge. Shadow froze, then barked sharply. He bolted ahead down a narrow ravine. Jack followed, heart pounding. At the bottom, a young hiker sat trapped beneath a fallen tree branch, ankle twisted, fear in her eyes. She looked up as Jack approached. "Don't worry, we've got you," Jack said, kneeling beside her. Shadow nudged her hand, comforting, protective. The rescue wasn't easy. Jack carefully lifted the branch with the help of rope and leverage while Shadow stayed alert, growling at the rocks above in warning. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, the hiker was free, tears mixing with dirt on her cheeks. "You saved me," she whispered. "All of you." Jack smiled, exhausted. "Not just me." He looked at Shadow, who wagged his tail faintly, tongue lolling, ears relaxed. This one did most of the work. They led her back to the road where paramedics waited. Jack watched as she was taken to safety, safe and alive. As the sun began to set, Jack and Shadow stood at the edge of the forest, watching the sky bleed into orange and purple. Jack crouched, resting his hand on Shadow's head. "You did it, boy. One last mission, and you nailed it." Shadow barked once, short, sharp, triumphant, as if he understood the weight of the moment. Jack looked at the horizon, feeling a strange mix of pride and relief. They had survived Iraq, death, chaos, and fear. They had returned home, carried the memories of war, and yet still found purpose, saving lives, protecting the innocent. Sarah appeared at the road's edge, holding a thermos of coffee. "Thought you could use a cup," she said, smiling. Jack stood, stretching, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Best coffee I've had in months." Shadow nudged him, demanding attention. Jack laughed, ruffling the dog's fur. Together, they watched the sun dip below the horizon, man and dog side by side. They didn't need medals or fanfare. They didn't need recognition. The bond they shared, forged in fire and blood, was reward enough. The world was quieter now, safer, and for Jack and Shadow, that was more than enough. As night fell over the mountains, the two of them walked back toward the convoy, ready for whatever came next, together. And somewhere deep inside, Jack knew, no matter the battles ahead, Shadow would always be by his side. The soldier and his dog, forever loyal, forever brave.